Imagine a piece of critical infrastructure forced to carry double its maximum load, day after day, while the repair crews try to fix the concrete, even as the fast traffic speeds by. That structural strain mirrors exactly what is happening on the floors of modern hospitals in 2026. Only instead of steel and concrete bearing the load, it is the nursing workforce. This diagram shows the current capacity of that workforce. Watch how the gauge rapidly drops. Right now, 65% of nurses report that they are completely running on empty. While stress is a universal constant in medicine, the data points to a highly specific anomaly. When measured against doctors and technicians, nurses carry a disproportionately heavier share of the systemic pressure. To keep the hospital network functioning and prevent a catastrophic system collapse, we have to look past general fatigue and isolate exactly why this specific group of professionals is burning out at such an accelerated rate. The answers lie in a 2025 study led by Petros Skalanis. His research team discarded the vague buzzword of exhaustion and mapped burnout as a rigorous, measurable clinical condition. They mapped a three-part clinical triad. Node 1, emotional exhaustion, where the internal reservoir drains to zero. Node 2, depersonalization, forming a protective hard shell deflecting emotional connection. Node 3, low personal accomplishment, the lingering feeling that your daily labor vanishes into a void. When you view burnout through this diagnostic lens, it reveals a measurable three-pronged structural failure of a human operating inside a deeply flawed system. Galanis's data revealed a specific vulnerability within that second node. Nurses exhibit significantly higher rates of depersonalization compared to their physician colleagues. This points directly to their daily physical environment. Nurses maintain a constant, uninterrupted proximity to the patient's bedside, requiring a continuous and heavy output of emotional resilience. That high emotional demand collides with a severe lack of organizational infrastructure, namely the massive volume of administrative data entry and charting forced onto the floor staff. You can see the mechanics of this imbalance here on the scale. The immense weight of constant patient proximity sits on one side, while the inadequate counterweight of organizational support completely collapses under the load, warping the entire beam. Under these exact conditions, building a cynical hard shell functions as a required involuntary survival mechanism to withstand the friction of a 12-hour shift. Because this exhaustion is a dynamic imbalance rather than a permanent state, the variables can be manipulated. By changing the inputs, the system can be engineered to tip the scales back to a stable position. By 2026, the global healthcare industry began treating this structural strain as an engineering problem. Hospitals adopted biometric technology, wearable devices that measure physiological data like heart rate and sleep patterns to serve as an early warning infrastructure for their staff. This chart tracks a waveform of those biometric stress levels, gathered from tools like Oura rings. Watch how a threshold alert triggers an intervention protocol exactly before the data plummets into the red exhaustion zone. By predicting severe fatigue in real time, administrators can adjust assignments or cycle staff off the floor, preventing a nurse's emotional reservoir from ever emptying entirely. This predictive data pairs with a logistical model called flexible sovereignty. This system integrates virtual nursing protocols to redistribute the physical labor of patient care. Through virtual oversight, experienced nurses monitor vital signs, conduct consultations, and review charts remotely. They maintain clinical safety while drastically reducing the miles they have to walk during a shift. These tools act as load-bearing structural upgrades, absorbing the physical and emotional friction that causes collapse without removing the caregiver from the process. Integrating automation into healthcare creates an interesting result. Offloading the endless administrative data entry onto artificial intelligence actually removes a major toxic stressor from the environment. Look at this split in priority. On the left, automated code handles the charting. On the right, we see the rise of relational nursing, a model where a provider's recovered time is redirected entirely back into face-to-face, human-to-human connection. When the hospital infrastructure effectively absorbs the grunt work, the nurse is no longer forced into a defensive posture. The need to build that thick wall of depersonalization simply dissolves. This aligns with concurrent industry movements like trauma-informed care, a clinical approach that recognizes the physical impact of a patient's past emotional trauma, putting empathy back at the center of the scientific process. The high stress levels recorded in the 2025 data mapped exactly where the pressure caused the most damage. In doing so, that research provided the architectural blueprint required to engineer a system that finally protects the people providing the care.